Auzubillahiminash-shaytanir-rajeem. Bismillahir-rahmanir-rahim. Assalamualaikum. Ji ayanu pakhair ni hao chunashumme washmale. Oh hi Gonzaimas, guten Morgen, hola, boyo, privet, kaifa hal? Haleshuma chatore, ahlan wa sahlan, marhaba. Buda, mucho gracias, Fabio, balli kare hosh galden and ayo khuyamora, chivato, chihal jod kalimera, khairutan, and a very warm welcome to everybody who's tuned into PTV World and are watching World this morning. Alongside my very well-learned colleague who happens to be Ms. Haja Sethi. I happen to be Shahzad Hassan Khan, and I hope and pray, we hope and pray that everybody out there is doing wonderfully well and that you're ready to kickstart your day with us. But first things first, hello Haja, assalamu alaikum, how are you feeling today?
Walaikum assalam, jazakallah khair. Thank you so much for introducing me, Shahzad. So, as we see that there is a transition, a little bit of a transition in the weather because we see that it is getting pleasant. It's not that much of a cold and I don't think so I'm liking it because it's just February and we want to experience the cold more. I was reading about something and I wanted to share it with you.
Go ahead.
Our audiences out there. And it talked about the divine encounter, and the concept was very fascinating for me because I think we all experience it, we all feel it, but sometimes we are unable to articulate it. So it talked about that how sometimes so our mind is constantly talking, so it's like there are lots of tabs that are being on, we are talking what is going to happen in the next moment, what is going to happen in the next year, lots of worries, lots of tensions, and lots of thoughts that are going on. But sometimes what happens is that it's just for a very few seconds, but when our mind goes quiet, that is when our soul overtakes and we see everything in a very different light. So for example, if we are watching a tree, we will see it in a very divine sort of a light, and we will feel the lightness of the tree. I don't know how to explain it because it is an experience that happens. And sometimes we feel it, especially if we are reading something, if it's a poem or if it's a song, we will perceive it in a very different way, very different light, and it will hit very differently. And we are able to experience it, maybe we are not able to articulate it, or maybe in the kindness of a stranger, or maybe in a smile of some child. It happens just for a very few seconds, but that is the point where our mind goes quiet and where our soul overtakes, and we always believe that soul is a celestial body. It is linked to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we see the divinity of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the tawheed of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in that moment, and that is just for a very few seconds, and then our mind takes back over, and all of those tabs that went quiet, they start talking again, what is going to happen, what are we going to do next moment, all of those worries, all of those tensions, and all of those things from the past and from the future starts to struck us, right? So make sure that you train your mind to get quiet for some time, and so that you can observe a lot of things, and you can find happiness in some small moments, right? So for example, if the sun is shining, you can feel happy about it, and it's always okay, it's always good to have your goals set for the future. But if you're so obsessed with those goals that it is depriving you of your happiness in the present moment, and it is depriving you of not living the moment of now, the present moment, so I think that's very problematic, and this is where you need to train your mind, and the best thing that you can do is meditation.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Haja, for saying it and putting it so beautifully, because now I can kind of relate with it, because earlier
you have those experiences and you always used to talk about it, right?
Because earlier I would never kind of comprehend or articulate it the way that you put it as well, because imagine that that the first thought which came to my mind while you were talking about it was that while I was sitting right in front of the Pasu cones, and while I was there, there was this moment when I could feel it, that that I'm more connected with that being, with that creator, soul being a celestial body, and wherever I was looking, I would always kind of reflect upon the creation of Allah Almighty, and
because
that's
your
something.
Soul was taking over your mind,
exactly,
right?
and we certainly want that. We would want I would certainly in particular want my soul to kind of take over, because my mind at times does not think the things right way as well. So probably I think for that you really need to train, you really need to.
And mind always have a negative self-bias, right? So mind will always talk about negative things. What if this is going to happen? What if you are going to do this? What if this is going to happen? And it usually has this bias because it is protecting us. It is making sure that we are safe. But in doing so, sometimes it becomes so obsessive about it that those thoughts become us. And this is where the difference lies, that you should never make those thoughts become you. Just observe those thoughts. let them come and then let them pass. Like, for example, like clouds come and go, right? So they're not sticking to the sun, always there. So this is where when you practice it, so you will feel the divinity of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in a very different light. And I think in this world where there's so much pressure going on, where there's so much competition going on, where there's so much race going on, we really need to calm ourselves more and feel the light of Allah.
Exactly. So it's more like how soulful intelligence will actually take over.
Yes,
But while we talk about the soul, the mind and the body, ladies and gentlemen, I think let's talk about the general elections and all the stakeholders and the bodies related to it as well. Because imagine Pakistan for the very first time, I think, is taking advantage of this technology that we call artificial intelligence.
Yes.
How are they doing that? For example, if we are to talk about voters list, for example, if we are to talk about potential voters for any political party, political parties in particular using artificial intelligence to plan and design their campaigns till the 6th of February 2024 is something which is fascinating. The world's talking about it, that how Pakistan has taken a lead in taking advantage of this technology, which is at the helm of affairs as well. And to kind of talk about that, because this subject in particular, artificial intelligence, and that too in the perspective of general elections, is something which was an eye-opener for us and for our entire team, which is why we've invited this amazing gentleman who will be kind of shedding more light onto how artificial intelligence is being used by political parties, for voters themselves, and for how people should be more aware and whether that potential voter, where does it lie? I think for any party to be out there and to kind of plan their and design their campaign based on artificial intelligence is something which I would kind of remark as salutations to all of those people who've done that. But very quickly, I think it's an honor to have this gentleman over here, in a short span of time, because this is something that only he can explain. Ladies and gentlemen, we're lucky that we've actually been joined by Engineer Dr. Sheikh Zahoor Sarwar Saab. Assalamu alaikum, sir. Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me here.
Thank
Sir, you are an industrial engineer and a technology expert, and it's wonderful to have such an amazing personality over here. So first of all, let's simplify it for our audiences. Artificial intelligence, general elections, what is the correlation?
Well, the correlation which we have formed and we have seen in Pakistan has been unprecedented all over the world. People are talking about it, the way it is being used in Pakistan, the use of technology as a whole. Artificial intelligence is one segment of it. It's not only artificial intelligence, it's using of the apps, it's using of the websites, it's using of the latest technologies by the parties, by different parties. Like one of the party have actually used AI for a speech, and one of the experts of the word, Nicholas Thompson, CEO of Atlantic, and he made a complete program on it, that how Pakistani political parties have actually used AI to approach more and more people.
Yeah.
And that has really amazed people. That it has never been done before in anywhere in the world. The way that artificial intelligence speech was brought up, the way people try to approach their voters and motivate them to come out and vote. That's really, really unprecedented.
But say, obviously, these are the good things that are happening, but there's lots of conversation globally. There is a debate going on about the dangers of artificial intelligence and how it is a threat to democracy. So, for example, if you talk about deep fakes, right, fake videos, deep fake audios, and there's so much deep fake that a bare eye cannot detect it. Algorithms may be there to detect them out, but obviously, when you see it with your naked eyes, obviously, you can't detect it. And then we've seen this tendency that misinformation, disinformation and fake news gets viral a lot rather than the debunking thing that has been going on, right?
Yeah.
So how do we deal with the, I mean, there are opportunities, but when we talk about the threats, how are we going to deal with that?
It's all about fear of unknown, If you don't know anything about AI, you will not know how people are using AI to cheat someone.
True.
If you don't know about AI, you don't know how people are actually using it for the right
But
cause.
we've seen the negative effects of deep fakes, right?
Yes, negative effects are always there. Positive effects are always there as well. But we have to be more educated about it. Like Mr. Javed Hassan, one of the expert, he has actually made AI platform for the Pakistani people for these elections. Its name is Go. I would request all of you to go and search for it. Dashboard, Third Eye -AI. So with the help of that, you will be able to know the actual thing happening out there. The fears are always there that someone is trying to fake something.
Yeah.
But let's try to find out that what is the actual thing going on. Until unless we know what AI is, if we don't know what technology is, how we are going to know that what is right and what is wrong.
And do you believe that artificial intelligence can bring more transparency and bring back the trust of the people when we talk about the voting?
Yes,
into the
people
selection
trust
process?
technology more. That's really there, because
Yes.
there are a lot of systems in our country where people don't have much confidence in those things, you know.
Right.
We don't know who
And they
wrote
always do
something, who
post
made
this.
the list with their hands. We don't know about it.
Yeah.
So the technology is one part, because human being, his nature is he wants to trust something. So technology is one part, they really want to trust. And I wish the way the political parties have used it, I wish government can also use it in the further coming elections. Let's make the thing transparent.
Right.
Why can't we use those technology the way the apps have been made? Only the election symbols, you know, that was a big game right now.
Yep.
People don't know. I never knew what was the symbol of my candidate I had to vote for.
True.
So I had to use the technology to know it. But
That's true.
if government actually start using those technologies,
Yep.
it will help people, it will help them build their confidence in the government as well, that they are making the thing transparency. Nothing is trying to be hidden by the people. You know?
Exactly, and thank you so much, for kind of pointing us in this direction as well,
Right.
because, in terms of when we talk about independent candidates, obviously,
Yes.
certainly we really need to be more aware about it, and these systems can help us. But when we come down to the level of transparency, where my amazing co-host has actually kind of spoken about it as well. Now, the problem over here is that, when it's going to come down to voters list, when it's going to come down to your very own constituency, obviously, we can ensure whether how many people came out to vote, how many people didn't utilize or exercise their right to vote. That's fine. But towards the end of the day, it's just that, how many ballot papers were being counted by those presiding officers, and eventually it's going to be a number on the chit or a perchi that, okay, these many votes for this party, these many votes for this party, or for any independent candidate. Rather, when we talk about transparency in general elections, it's more about the number of votes any party has gotten. So do you think that in coming days that we will achieve a certain level of transparency where artificial intelligence and such application and technology can actually update a voter that, okay, in your constituency, these many votes, real time, these many votes for this party, these many votes for this party. Do you think that we're moving in that direction?
Sort of a
I
digital
wish,
machine,
I
right?
wish
Yeah.
we
Sorry
move
for
in
putting
that
you under the
direction.
spot,
No,
yeah.
you are very right. I wish we actually move into that direction. Just because before this program, I was listening to a few people out there, and they were saying that they don't want to go for the vote. The confidence is not there. By virtue of your program, I would request everyone out there that this country needs your vote.
True.
Just go out for the existence and independence of this country. We need vote of every person out there. You should go out, you should vote, and we should strive towards this thing, that why can't we have artificial intelligence and technology in the polling stations as well?
True.
Right now we are talking about the campaigns run by the political parties, specifically few of them, not every of them, because lot of the people still believe sitting in Land Cruiser going into the villages, they're going to get the votes, or the way they are saying that using the power of currency, they will get the votes. Why can't we use the power of technology to convince people?
And there's a reason. So number one, what you've touched upon, obviously we've spoken about it, me and Haja and our entire team, we vouch for it, that, if you are not going to exercise your vote, your right to vote, I mean, obviously next 5 years, you shouldn't be really saying anything about whatever is going on in the country.
Very
because
right.
you never were at the front or at the brunt of the affairs. Number two, now where we speak of artificial intelligence using technology, imagine that if we are to kind of vote only from our cell phones, not that we will be at our comfort, the voter list is going to be increased many folds as well. The campaigns that people have been investing a lot of money in will certainly reduce. There won't be so much of hassle. You go to every town, every city at this moment, it's all panaflexes and banners. But now there's another connection that I would want you to kind of shed light on. Because now when we speak of artificial intelligence, we see that artificial intelligence has actually influenced how democracies are being run world over. Not just that, when we talk about democracies, it actually kind of is going to link with the Internet of Things and how Internet is everywhere and how people are utilizing. Do you think that, when we talk about Islamic Republic of Pakistan, which is a democratic nation, in days to come, we will be using technology, okay, let alone be general elections, for the democracy to be run in a very smoother way? Or do you still think that there needs to be brains out there, who are still deciding the fate of the country in terms of political leadership?
you know, the basic problem we are having is that different people or the parties,
Yeah.
they're actually using it, you know, technology.
But when they come into the government, why don't they use it?
Why don't they use it?
Yeah.
That is the main point now.
Yeah.
But once you are at the realm of the affairs, that why can't you use technology to make people more confidence in the transparency and in the system, that now the things are getting very right. Maybe the basic problem is the same which ma'am highlighted, that the fear that somebody is going to use it in a wrong way.
That's true.
That is one thing, but
That's
because
true
of that,
imagine that, you know,
we cannot stop it. I am in Pakistan Engineering Council. I am a governing body member of that, and I have been shouting a lot on that we engineers, or we the technologists, we are the people who have to actually implement it, even it is not implemented over there.
No, but that's the right question, because imagine that on the day of voting, for example, coming back to general elections, on the day of voting, if you are to talk about, you know, how you get to vote online, you know, by, you know, being at the comfort of your place, imagine that the system's hacked. Now, how do you think? Imagine that, you know, all of that can be manipulated, unfortunately, and that too by somebody who does not, or who's not a friend of Pakistan. So there are risks, and there needs to be, you know, some processes.
But
and
we
methods.
have to work on that, Nasir.
Yeah.
Just by having the fears, we cannot stop using those technology, like the way these parties have actually used it, and they have used it in their advantage.
True.
They have actually approached people.
True.
And in this point, I would also like to request all of the people out there that we must have some political patience in us, you know.
Yeah, that's true.
My one brother wants to vote for one party, let him do that.
Yeah.
My other brother wants to vote for some other party, let him do that.
But what if you serve biryani to one of your brother? Do you think they will be convinced?
Doesn't matter, we eat biryani together, but we'll vote where we want to, you know.
Yeah, that's true.
No, people within the family, they're fighting with each other.
Yeah.
You know, they are calling names to each other, like, I don't want to use those names.
Thank
but
you.
why can't we have political patience? Why can't the government have political patience? Why can't the political parties have political patience? Okay, fine, let the people decide. Help anyone who's coming out there, and help them with the help of technology, you know.
With political parties, they do have enough political patience. You know, this is something which I've seen in Pakistan growing up.
That's very
Apart from
debatable, because there is no. I think I do agree with this here, because there's a lot of polarization, there's a lot of fragmentation within the society, within the family members, within the husband and wife, within the brothers and sisters, and I think and I think sometimes it is a good thing, because you have your own right, you have your own opinion, and you can exercise that. But obviously, like Shahzad mentioned, there can be leakages in the system. Like he talked about the concept of hacking, and if we are to completely implement it, and if we believe that it can be transparent, but at the other end, so for example, he talked about some enemy country or some other person. So for example, we've seen this thing, especially in the American elections, that how there were, you know, massive accusations that how Russia is influencing the elections in the favor of Trump, and Russia is using the artificial intelligence, it is using social media, and obviously when we talk about the globalized countries, the globalized world, so I mean these influences, these diffusions can happen inside Pakistan.
That
right?
can happen, and you know, there is always a way out. The way people used to build castles so the thieves don't come in.
Right.
Similarly, in the world of technology, if you have AI, you have cybersecurity as well.
True.
Right.
You know, so there are thousand and thousand fields coming out there. We have to actually work, instead of just sitting and making those stems just like that, and on the paper we are trying to do everything. So everything is happening in the room and nobody actually knows what happened in there. Why can't we make it technology helpful?
Yeah.
You know, why can't we use those technologies?
But sir, that technology needs to come from within now, because now when we speak of these artificial intelligence platforms, all of these artificial intelligence platforms are not formed or built over here by our hands, by our own people. So imagine that if there's a platform which is governed and run by some other country which is not Pakistan friendly, imagine that there will always be chances of breakthroughs. You know, there will always be people to kind of manipulate, hijack.
I would like to request over here, I just mentioned Mr. Javed Hassan, a Pakistani who made Third Eye. That is a Pakistani, you know, this concept that artificial intelligence is made out there somewhere. What is artificial intelligence platform? It is just some kind of coding.
Yeah.
There are thousands and thousands of people sitting in Pakistan who are expert in that. It's not that they don't know about artificial intelligence. They can actually make their own platforms. Why can't we make our own platform?
That's it. That's
one
the first
Pakistani,
step.
you know, one Pakistani I gave you the example of, that he has actually made that. there are other people as well. Why can't we have we have so many engineers, so many software engineers and computer science experts in Pakistan. There's one university in Islamabad, FAST, it has 13 to 14 sections every year. Every section has 15 students.
True.
How many people we are taking as intake? People are coming out. Why can't we use them to make our own AI platform? And they are being made, but we have to make it at official level as well.
It needs to come from Election Commission of Pakistan, so that's it.
Well, I'm not very hopeful about that they are going to do anything about that. But there are organizations, there are people who actually want to work on it, and we must work towards that. If we don't, we'll be having another 50 years ahead. Again, we'll be still crying on who stamped what and who is making the list with their own hand.
And obviously, sir, when you talk about, I mean, all of these hue and cry that is often going on in our election system, we have seen. So now let's talk about some of the challenges which can come in the implementation of this entire AI program, and especially in the transparency when we talk about it. So there's this entire old elite system that is associated with maintaining their monopoly over the older, traditional paradigms, right? So like Shahzad mentioned, so there's a lot of awareness which is going on within the people with the advent of artificial intelligence, and maybe they are not very happy with that awareness which is going on, right? Because their entire monopoly, their power, their domination is associated with that entire, system, the old paradigms. So do you feel that with the advent of social media, with the diffusion that has been going on across the world, we will be able to overcome this challenge of, unsettling the status quo and having a new status quo which is more pro-technology, technology savvy, because you're associated with this particular
That's what we're going to do. We are going to use those technologies to break that status quo. We are having the same problem. I'm telling you, the engineers and technologists, we are having the same problem in one of the organization of engineers, Pakistan Engineering Council.
Yep.
Okay.
People are sitting there from last 3 decades, billions of rupees are coming in from the people, and all they talk about is who is going to stay in which 5-star hotel.
True.
That's what they all think about.
Right.
They don't think about that how this money can be used to make these platforms. If we, the technologists, engineers, we are not implementing it, how the people out there, normal people, is going to talk about it?
So let's simplify it. So what do you think influence, or what will influence its implementation or implementation of such systems for Pakistan?
Human motivation.
Number one. Okay, that's one.
The awareness coming into the people. Small little kids. I was just looking at so many different videos. It was either about one party or, well, it was mostly about one party, but the kids, the awareness they are getting, and the way they are talking about it, that we are not ready for this kind of system. We want the impact on the children below 18 years and the people from 18 to 28 or 30, the impact they're having in these elections, what is going on right now. We need to have a clear technological system so people can trust. Otherwise, people will stop trusting
and because
this system.
Yes, thank you so much for saying that. And because the 60% population is of the young people, right? And because they are going to take the chains, or they're already taking the chains of the governance and whatever, right? So now let's talk about some of the other initiatives apart from the, implementing it in the election campaign at the government level or at the state level, which Pakistan Engineering Council wants to implement. What are the future plans for that and incorporating artificial intelligence?
Well, first we want to implement it in PEC right now.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're not ready to get it implemented. The people, the
Even
status
within
quo,
PEC?
within the PEC, the status quo, the people sitting over there from last 20-30 years, they are going through the same system which every Pakistani
You yourself are a
organization.
governing member. How come that's not happening?
That's why I went to the court against them. For God's sake, what are you doing? I'm fighting against them. That you have to change the status quo. How can you talk about AI? You don't even know about it. Why don't you let young engineers come up in the governing body? Let them take the lead.
Yes.
They're not allowing it. From last 60, 70 years,
but
they're
you're
not
keeping
allowing
at it.
We are fighting for it, and we are going to make it happen.
Inshallah.
We are going to bring the young engineers over there.
Right.
We are going to bring the young lot in different places, so they can actually work on that. The way my son works on these tools, I'm not that good on that. Despite my PhD It's nothing as far as that his elance or freelance and the way he's working on it. I ask him, I don't feel shame on that.
Exactly. And the kind of skill set, they possess as well, because this is something which is very similar. We could see it in our household as well with children doing it. But very quickly, sir, towards the end, one last question. You can say yes or no, okay? So this is something which I've seen in the past 3 general elections that I've voted. And what I've seen is that, so whichever party is going to win, the other party is always going to have a slogan of Dhandli. Do you think artificial
100%.
intelligence can kind of save us from this drama?
Yes, if we have artificial intelligence within the polling stations as well.
Yeah.
If we have the electrical poll system implemented, yes, then nobody can say that.
Exactly. And that's what we
what
want.
if the light goes off? That is going to be another debate.
We can have generator as well,
My mind is having a lot of negative talk. I don't think so. We are going to have that. So with that, we will say thank you so much to sir for coming here, for having this wonderful conversation regarding the interchange of artificial intelligence, the electoral system, and how obviously our entire country is ready and set for the election, and that is going to happen tomorrow. So don't make sure that you go and vote out there. And with that, we are taking a short break. And after you come back, we have a very interesting discussion lined up. Don't go anywhere.
Good morning.
Welcome back, and before going on to the break, I alluded to the fact that we're going to develop a very interesting conversation, and obviously yesterday we also spoke about the election manifestos and how climate change is also an important aspect of the governance nowadays, especially inside the Pakistan, because we have seen 2 years ago that how climate change has impacted Pakistan in the form of the massive floods, which has done immense damage to our economy, which were around $30 billion of the climate losses, and how to tackle this very burning issue, which is not just an issue of Pakistan, but it is an inter-global issue, and it requires the assistance of the humanity at the massive scale, because if we are not going to protect our environment, no one else is going to do that, and we only have just one planet Earth to inhabit, right? So when we talk about the climate finances, obviously there is generally a conversation, there generally is a momentum built around this concept. There's a lot of aid that is also coming in, but we are going to talk about the efficacy of the aid, the commitment versus delivering on that particular aid, the development aid, and how people or the world in general perceives it, because there's lots of conversation on the efficacy of the loss and damage fund, where the Western world is not ready to commit to this entire loss and damage fund, and they are responsible for producing such sort of changes in our environment, which is impacting the vulnerable countries like Pakistan, which are already enmeshed in the poverty. So when we talk about climate finances, how we're going to deal with that, climate finances and the equation versus with the development aid, we are very glad that we have been joined by someone who happens to be a team lead of climate finance Accelerator. He happens to be Mr. Khurram Lalani. Assalamu alaikum, and thank you so much for coming to our show.
Walaikum pleasure is all mine.
It's wonderful to have you, and I think that my co-host has actually alluded to it very beautifully as well, because loss and damage fund, us being so unfortunate for not coming up with projects where we can tap onto it, that's one thing, and climate finance. But the other thing is that most of the time we are confusing it with development aid and climate financing. So there are two different things. How can we differentiate for better awareness of our people? Please, let's get started.
Sure. Thank you. Lovely to be here, and thank you so much for having me over here.
It's a pleasure.
So I think, I think let's just go back a little bit and try and see what traditional modes of financing which are available to Pakistan or to any other emerging economies. So when we tend to think of the financing which is available, we tend to think of the multilateral aid to start with. So for example, ADB, World Bank, IMF, and these are country preparedness levels. What normally happens is that these multilaterals are set up to assist countries like Pakistan, and they are non-competitive in nature. So what generally happens is that IMF is going to have a set quota, World Bank is going to have a set quota, and Pakistan can tap into those set quotas by really not doing anything extra. I mean, you have to undergo through some kind of policy measures.
But there's so much rigorous systems that are set in place. So for example, when we were talking about the loan from the IMF, there were certain clauses in that, there were certain conditionalities in that you have to be more, have more green policies, and you have to adapt to this climate entire system, the change that has been going on. But then again, there's entire conversation that how the IMF, the World Bank, these entire systems, they are the product of the post-World War II, right? And they're not entirely designed in a way that can tackle example, the issues of climate change. So, for example, Pakistan is suffering from $30 billion of losses, and we are already a poor country, right? So, our state has to do a lot to look after the people who are suffering under the poverty line, or they're near to that poverty line. So, don't you feel that there is a need to have these reforms, especially in these particular international structures, so that they can be more climate friendly? And when we talk about development aid, there's entire conversation that how it is very agenda driven, and the donors want to implement their own particular reforms or own particular vision, which does not align with the ground reality.
And it directs us more about मैं कीता भी कुछ नहीं है तो नुकसान भी मेरा हो रहा है.
Exactly. So how do you deal with that?
Sure, but I think let's just go back to the traditional modes of financing. The traditional modes of financing are generally available. All you need to do is, so for example, IMF has a quota available for these, for vulnerable countries like ours. We sort of follow their set of conditionalities. But it makes it work
so hard to get that quota. I mean, this is the point of that, right?
Agreed. But now let's switch back to climate finance. I think the important distinction between climate finance and traditional finance is, in climate finance, it's very competitive. It is not multilateral. So there are no set quotas. There are no set quotas for anyone. So Pakistan would have to try and come up with a proposal or with a project that sort of can tell a story that by implementing this project, I can really make a paradigm shift when I tend to implement a climate project.
But that's what the problem is. So imagine that we had two entrepreneurs all the way from states, who traveled to Pakistan, wanted to participate in COP28. And when they went over there, they realized that we are unable to come up with such proposals and projects with which we can tap onto that. Why do you think that we are unable to do that? Is it because we might not be as smart as people are these days? Or do you think that we're not thinking in the right direction?
So maybe a bit of both.
Okay.
And
not very overwhelming, but yes.
I'll give you guys an example. The statistics are, so for example, under a very most talked about fund is Green Climate Fund.
True.
And under GCF, when you happen to see countries who've been able to tap GCF, you see India, you see China, they've happened to have way more projects. Bangladesh have way more projects than Pakistan. Pakistan has 4 or 5 projects. Bangladesh has comparatively, 29, 30 projects. India more than 50 projects. China, somewhere around 70 to 80 projects. So the size does matter, and maybe one of the concerns is that maybe those countries are generally have more capacity within themselves, within their own institutions, within their own people, to again be able to tap into those opportunities, to come up with those kind of projects. And Pakistan needs to seriously rethink.
I don't think so that there is any dearth of the concept or the ideas within the Pakistan that are more climate friendly policies or initiatives, but it's just that I think the economy or the shape or the size of the country also matters, because when we talk about the IMF, like I talked about it, or the World Bank or all of these massive, the financing institutions, they have generally a bias towards
so they make it more difficult for us, in simpler terms, which is why.
Exactly. So let's talk about what exactly is your project about and how are you tackling the climate change initiative particularly.
Sure. So I think, just to conclude the earlier point we need to ensure that under climate finance, our projects have to be competitive, because we are competing with the world.
True.
It's not something that we're going to have a set quota designed for Pakistan by IMF, by World Bank, by ADB.
That's the good news too as well.
Yeah. That's a great news. That's a great news. So
wonderful.
if we are sort of capable, if we have the right capacities within ourselves, we can tap into those projects much more quickly. And there's going to be a systematic efforts where the developed countries, G7, G10, G20s, the likes of them will pool in funds, and there's always a question about their commitment levels over there.
True.
But generally, I think the fund flow, we've started seeing some kind of fund flows around climate financing. All we need to do is to be able to have those capacities within ourselves so that we can tap into those fundings.
True.
If we are not able to tap into those fundings, then I think the problem lies essentially with us and not
I think you're working on that particular.
So when we talk about Climate Finance Accelerator project over here in Pakistan, which is actually funded by the UK government, so how did that happen and what projects?
Great. So the entire concept of CFA, and I think such a unique concept, the entire idea is that we want to have, as you mentioned, there's no dearth of ideas, there are no dearth of concepts.
Mashallah.
But we want to have right projects and right concepts who are mature enough to be able to get investors' attention.
Okay.
It is going to be a projectized environment. Climate is a very projectized environment, so you essentially deploy and develop projects. Now, the projects have to have certain capacity levels. If they are not really good enough projects, then obviously nobody is going to fund them, and no one is going to fund them. Obviously, we won't be able to achieve the climate agenda that we aspire to achieve. So in this batch, we've got around 8 projects, 8 fabulous low carbon projects
Right.
in waste management, electric vehicles, transport, afforestation, agriculture. And these are just not concepts. These are very mature ideas. These are very mature companies.
Right.
And what we're trying to do is to handhold them, build in more capacities.
And can you elaborate on the waste management, because I do feel that obviously climate change is a discussion, but waste management has been an issue of Pakistan for a very long time.
Sure.
And if you even particularly talk about Islamabad, we do not have a very great landfill site here to
Right.
dispose of our
Right.
garbage or whatever the litter is going on,
Sure.
right? So what exactly is your idea about, and how it's going to tackle that problem, and how it aligns with the climate financing?
Sure. So generally the way that CFA works is that we're going to have an open call.
Okay.
Projects and from all over Pakistan, they apply.
Right.
We select around 8 to 9 projects.
Okay.
And then we handhold them. Once we feel that they are ready, we put them across to investors for investor roadshow. Investors judge them, talk to them, discuss, have more queries and more back and forth. And we try and close the financing gap between the investors and those projects who are low carbon, working in the climate space.
Yep.
The waste project that you mentioned, we essentially have a waste project from Karachi. And these guys, it's a very unique idea. What these guys are trying to do is, every time that we end up in a grocery store, we buy a bottle of a shampoo or a bottle of a, cooking oil or whatever, and there is a plastic, waste that we incur.
True.
Why not have, refilling stations where you just happen to, take
the bottle.
whatever bottle, get your cooking oil or a shampoo or a dishwashing agent or whatever, and you can get at a cheaper price, much improved quality.
So it's more like a carbonated drink from a fountain, right?
Right.
That's what it is.
Right.
So the companies start to fill in. There's lesser manufacturing of plastic. There's lesser waste as well, and it's a brilliant idea. It's more like getting an ice cream out in a cone, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I think it's a beautiful idea.
Right.
यार मेरा shampoo खत्म हो गया, मैं भर के लेके आया.
Right.
Wow, that's good.
Absolutely.
And can you elaborate on more such
But with that,
projects? Yes.
there's one more major problem, and that is that we're so used to of, we still they do not know whether we are having Khalis doodh or not. So
Right.
imagine
Right.
what's going to happen with
Right.
such shampoos and cooking oil.
Right.
That's another problem for us.
And of course, and I think there are so many things. So there are behavioral changes that we need to inculcate, and,
Yeah.
and probably we need to make aware of the people, the right standards, the right quality, and hence once a project is ready end to end, it is then going to serve the market and
Wow.
And also please shed light on the other projects. So for example, you
Sure.
talked about the afforestation, and we've
Yeah.
seen that our state is very proactive
Yeah.
in having a more vibrant forest cover. Obviously, there are leakages in the systems, and
Right.
we've seen that.
Right.
But this is where the civil society can step in, right?
Right.
And they can fill the gap when we talk about the afforestation. So what is this project about?
Sure. So afforestation, we've got a great project where there's a company who's trying to put up a forest in different parts of Pakistan
Right.
for carbon offsets. And
Okay.
carbon offsets is again a new thing in the world. The idea is that
How you balance
want to,
it and you get money in return as
you
well.
want to
yeah.
monetize your carbon projects,
Right,
and
right.
this is a great way of doing it.
Right.
Pakistan, we've done a lot of large afforestation projects. It's just that we've not been able to monetize them. I think this project aims to sort of do exactly like this.
Right.
I'll just talk
Sure.
very quickly,
Sure.
30 seconds. The other projects that we have, so for example, this other project that we're working with, they've got this massive greenhouse gas facility being set up,
Okay.
and they're growing tomatoes and chilies. The amount of
Okay.
land that you would require to grow tomatoes and chilies
Right.
at that scale would essentially require you probably 5,000 acres.
Okay.
Right.
They'll be able to do that in 250 acres or probably
Okay.
300 acres.
That's it.
That's it.
Like
it's
multi
the-
levels of it.
Absolutely, the greenhouse gases and the
There's a
specific
lot of
that you-
technology into it.
Right. So climate, one interesting component is technology, innovation, capacities, capabilities, our own commitments, followed by financing, and then you deliver a great climate project.
Exactly. Wow, that's wonderful. But thank you so much, Mr.
Thank you so
Lalani,
much.
for being with us. It was wonderful to be in conversation with you, and for somebody
you
who's
so
so prepped up, well, not really
Right.
prepped up, but already knows what he's talking about. So thank you so much for being with
My
us. Thank you so much for awaiting our audiences out there, and anybody, you know, it may be me, Hajra, anybody from our team, you know, anybody out there, they will have this, or they will stand this opportunity to go out there, you know, write a proposal, think of a project, at least think. I think everybody, you know, please, rather than just being on reels and phones and whatnot, think about what you can do and how you can probably tap into such an opportunity as well. And for everybody who's out there, ladies and gentlemen, we always speak about it. It's always a shared responsibility. So please make sure that you kind of take that burden onto yourself as well. Pakistan jitna hamara hai, utna tumhara bhi hai aur aapka bhi hai. So thank you so much for
Thank you
staying
so much.
tuned. Thank you so much
Thank
once
you so
again.
much.
And thank you to my team as well for such wonderful guests, you know, that every day we get this opportunity to speak about how Pakistan can be better, inshallah, in coming days as well. And with future generations the way they are, ladies and gentlemen, you know, we have a very bright future. Until next time, 1, 2, 3, good morning.